Hello, everybody. Adam Parks here with another episode of Receivables Roundtable. Today, I'm meeting with Jud Phillips from Capital Compliance Group that focuses on the licensing portion of the receivables management business. And Jud and I have been talking for a little over a year now about licensing issues, and I've been watching his LinkedIn videos and learning a lot from him over the past year, and was really excited to have him come and join us here on Receivables Roundtable. So thank you so much, Jud, for coming in. Can you take 2 seconds and tell us a little bit about yourself and your company?
Hey, Adam. Well, first of all, thank you very much. I appreciate the invitation. I've been in, I'm a serial entrepreneur. Okay, we'll just leave it at that. And so I've done a bunch of things. And about 3 years ago, a friend of a friend approached me, actually approached my friend first and then called me up. And he was a completely unlicensed debt collector. I mean, he was a pirate room, as I like to call him. You know, the kind, hey, I got the sheriff on the phone. If you don't pay me right now, you're going to jail. You know, that kind of thing. So anyway, he to give him credit, he realized those days are over. That ship has sailed. And so he wanted to get legitimate. So he asked me if I could help him put together the licenses and everything. And I looked at it, I said, sure. And then as I was doing it for him, I realized, there's an opportunity here. And so that's how Capital Compliance Group was born. And so we got my friend, who I don't have permission to mention his name, so I'll just not mention his name other than my friend. He's licensed right now in, I think, 33 jurisdictions, which is where he wants to be. So that's really good. Capital Compliance Group, basically the pitch I give people is we outsource your licensing department. We do it cheaper than you can do it in-house. Plus, I don't know any agency that has somebody who's just dedicated to doing licensing. And of course, the issue when you have somebody who's not just dedicated to doing licensing, they've got other jobs to do, and which means they don't necessarily keep up with licensing. For example, California and New York this year, we're going to implement licensing schemes, 2 states that had not had licensing. And New York has put theirs on hold because of the virus issue. California is still pushing through with its. So, if you don't know this, if you don't keep up with this space, you can end up with a rude surprise. And, I've also had a client come to us one time who he went one day to check on his firm's licensing and discovered that his person who was doing their licensing, I don't know what she was doing, but it was not filing.
It wasn't licensing.
Yeah, it's like, Houston, we have a problem.
Sure.
And they had to stop collecting on a number of big portfolios because they suddenly discovered their licenses in those states were no longer valid because they'd either never been applied for or never been renewed. And that's a big problem.
That's definitely a big problem. And I can tell you, as a reformed chief compliance officer myself, when I first took over that role, licensing was one of the biggest issues that I had. And, I was very fortunate at the time. I was also developing the CompliArm software, which is now part of the Privana IPAX platform, where we were managing licenses. And so I did have some really good tools to assist me with both the licensing process and managing the licensing of my vendors, but I wasn't really the one that was going out and doing the licensing ourselves. But it was always a major factor for me, both in evaluating third-party agencies for potential placements and also looking at our own internal licensing as a passive debt buyer at that time. But as we talk about licensing, what's the real danger that comes along with being unlicensed? So if I want to just go be a debt collector and I don't get the licenses, what risks am I running by not being up to par with my licenses?
All right, here's the first thing I would tell anybody who asks that question. Get on Google and Google in debt collector. All right, on that page, you're going to see, there'll be all kinds of entries, but you will see ads for lawyers who are suing debt collectors. And this is becoming more and more common. Debtors, instead of for whatever reason they don't want to pay, so they're turning to a lawyer. And you'll see like websites like suethecollector.com and things like that. And so, your case goes into intake in a law firm. All right. I say your case, the case with your firm. And the first thing the lawyer's going to do is they're going to check, okay, we're in the state of Utah, and I'm just picking one here. We're in the state of Utah. I check Acme Debt Collectors. Oh, you're not licensed. Well, the growing trend in the federal courts right now is saying that if you are an unlicensed debt collector, that is what lawyers call a per se or an automatic violation of the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And as I like to say, at that point, the only issue left is how big's the check you're going to write?
Understood. And that what a scary thought, considering how large those checks can ultimately get. And the consumer attorneys have definitely been stepping up their game. They've weaponized search engine optimization to show up when you search for a particular debt collection company name. And I mean, that's my company, Branding Arc, spends a significant amount of time managing reputations of agencies and debt buyers for that purpose of kind of pushing down the negativity that's associated with their company, especially for those that are really good companies that are participating in their local community and doing all the right things. So definitely a scary thought. I personally was always a big fan of outsourcing my licensing process. I know that that's what you're doing professionally, at this point in your career. Tell me a little bit about why people that are watching or listening to this would ultimately want to outsource their licensing.
Yeah, first of all, licensing is what we do. And again, as I mentioned a minute ago, it's I haven't come across a single agency yet that has a person whose sole job is licensing. They're going to be doing other things, and so you're dividing your attention. And if you happen to have a big project coming up, and that's what you're spending your time and attention on, and it's kind of consuming you, you might let deadlines slip. You might not necessarily get something correct. One issue that we're having right now is because of the whole COVID thing. Resident manager license testing in Nevada has kind of been put on hold. And if you collect in Nevada, you got to have a resident manager. So that's kind of a big thing right there. What we do is we just, again, outsource your licensing completely. We will handle the initial applications. In fact, we do it in such a way that we make it pretty much painless for you. We'll handle the initial applications, then we calendar your renewals. And every time you've got a renewal coming up, we let you know well in advance, hey, you've got whatever state, Connecticut coming up. Here's what we need to get you renewed. Information we need, fees that have to go to the states. And by the way, I'll tell you something. When we tell you what a state fee is, it's actually what that state is charging you. We don't pad that a little bit so that we can have, a little bit extra Christmas money. You get charged exactly what the state is charging you.
Excellent. And, so as you're going through that licensing process for a particular client, what does that process look like? And I know that we've got kind of a short period of time here, and I know that it's a very long and involved process, but as you're getting started with somebody, and somebody is either starting a new agency or looking to have somebody take over their licensing management, what does that process look like? And what's that timeline look like to either get licensed as a new agency or to kind of convert over the management to an outsourced partner?
I was always told the difference between someone who's good and someone who's an expert is this. Someone who's good will answer your question. Someone who's an expert will say, it depends. It depends. Seriously, what we do is, every situation is unique. We'll do a quick overview. And one of the things we do is we get on a call with the principals, and we need to know what your strategy is, what's important to you. Because some states are real easy to get licensed in. Some states, the open border states, you really don't need a license, but we will work with attorneys to provide opinion letters just to protect you in case somebody comes and says, hey, what's your authority to be operating in this state? And then, what we typically do, if just getting licensed is what's important and not any particular state, we choose the path of least resistance. We're going to get you the easy states first, and then we're going to go to the really tough states. And, what are the three worst right now? Probably Nevada, Massachusetts, and North Carolina. And so, unless you need those immediately, we sort of save those for the tail end. Generally, it's done inside of 12 months. If you're starting from zero, it's generally done inside of 12 months.
Okay.
And then, we do Canadian licenses as well.
Oh, interesting. And you have a lot of clients that have crossed over into working in Canada as well?
We've got a couple of them. It's very interesting. Periodically, we do what we call a surge. If a client has a special need, in this case, an agency had a change in ownership. And so if you have a change in ownership, you got to turn around, and there's a lot of states you have a very specific time limit that you got to notify them, or you have some problems with licensure. And so yeah, I usually do the business development side of things. And so I pitched in and helped with our fulfillment team. And I got to look at some of the Canadian statutes for the first time. It's a little different from America, but it's something that we handle and we do, and our clients are happy with us.
Well, that's great. I mean, it sounds like you guys have got licensing under control over there, and I look forward to continuing to see some of your videos that are coming out on LinkedIn. And I think you've been creating some really great content. If somebody who was watching or listening wanted to reach out and contact you, what would be the best way to do that?
All right, a couple of different ways to do it. First of all, on my videos, I give you my number, my cell number, 615-241-5350. You call that, you're going to hear me pick it up. So feel free to do that.
Thank you very much, and I'll post your contact information below the video as well for anybody that wants to reach out to Jud, or if anybody has some topics that they'd like to discuss on our new Receivables Roundtable sessions. Love to hear from you. Love to hear your thoughts, and we're going to be looking for additional guests throughout 2020. So, looking forward to talking with you again in the near future, Jud. And thank you everybody for taking the time to watch our video today. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam.